Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. I'm Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Briana, and I don't. This week we watched Trick or Treat.
One of my personal favorites. I've really been wanting to rewatch this lately anyway.
And the thoughts are positive. I'll say that for now.
Yeah. You know, I was pleasantly surprised with Briana's reaction to this movie.
Let's start with the credits. So this was written and directed by Michael Dougherty. It stars Anna Paquin as Laurie, Brian Cox as Mr. Krieg, Dylan Baker as Steven, and Quinn Lord as Sam. And by the way, we don't ever hear any of those character names at all.
We hear a couple. Briana's just usually too busy writing notes to pick up on them.
We might have heard Steve, maybe.
Yeah, and we heard Anna Paquin's character, who I don't even remember. The only name I don't remember hearing is Sam.
And you heard Mr. Krieg?
Oh, yeah. I heard Mr. Krieg a bunch of times. It's all in my notes.
Please. All right. Well, a summary of the movie. It was hard to summarize this because of the nature of it. So I'm just going to say, not my best summary, but it's fine. We visit a town that can only be described as Halloweentown based on how much it loves the holiday. And it's seen through the lens of a group of preteens, college girls, the school principal, and a little creepy pumpkin scarecrow child thing.
And the principal's neighbor, Mr. Krieg.
Right. All right. So what is your experience with this film? You did say it is one of your favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this movie right around the time it first came out. It was never in theaters. This was a straight to DVD film.
Okay.
We'll get into that a little bit when I do my flesh wounds. But I watched this movie, I think, with Mallory, who is my horror movie partner, for those of you that don't know her. And we both loved it immediately. I think we had heard a little hype, seen a trailer, and we were both really excited about this movie. And it took a really long time to come out, which, again, I'll get into in just a second. But when it came out, we probably just rented the DVD or bought the DVD or something because it was 2010.
It was 2007.
It actually came out in 2009.
Okay, IMDb is wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it was filmed in 2007. That's what I'm about to get into. Yeah, so we saw it, loved it, and I've just seen it pretty much every opportunity since. Like, every time I remember it exists, I'm like, I'm going to watch Trick or Treat.
My experience with this film is the 300 movie, and that is because I'm obsessed with 300. One of my cats was named Leonidas. He was a Spartan cat. And I used to watch the DVD because it was 2009 or whatever all the time. And it had the trailer for Trick or Treat on it. I think because Legendary Pictures did both. So because when we were watching Trick or Treat, I recognized that Legendary Pictures thing, which I very much associate with 300. So yeah, I just always used to skip over it because it was a very scary trailer. And in my mind, this movie and that trailer do not match up at all.
Yeah, I mean, it is, the movie itself, when you're watching it, is not really a scary experience. It's a fun experience. It's like going to a theme park based on scary movies, honestly.
Oh, that's a great way of saying it, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Legendary Pictures, is that the one with, like, the Celtic knot?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I know that. I remember that from 300, too.
All right, so what are your flesh wounds?
Before I get into flesh wounds, I've got Rotten Tomatoes. It has an 83% score on Rotten Tomatoes. This was very well received by critics at the time, and Bloody Disgusting ranked it 9th in their top 20 horror films of the decade for 2000 to 2010, or 2001 to 2010, rather. So very good reception. Like I said last week, and I talked to you about, Briana, this is a horror fan's horror movie. This is, you know, if you don't like scary movies, you'll still probably like this movie, but it's definitely just got a lot of, you know, in-jokes, sort of flips a lot of things on their head that you would expect.
And that made me really nervous, too. I was thinking, okay, a horror fan's horror movie, well, I'm not going to like this. But I did.
You're so wrong. But yeah, so the flesh wounds, I've got a couple pretty good stories here. The first is, like Briana said, it was written and directed by Michael Dougherty. It was actually conceived by Michael Dougherty as well. It's based on, there was a 1996 short called Season's Greetings, which was an animated short, very low quality animation. It's only like 4 minutes long. I watched it myself, and it has actually Sam from this movie, who is out trick-or-treating, being followed by a mysterious and menacing subject. You see like a picture of a missing child, and it's just kind of like hinted that, you know, Sam is in danger. And obviously after watching this movie, I could kind of see where it was going, but with no history for the character, with no experience for the character, you assume Sam is in danger. There is a bit of a kerfuffle. The screen goes black, and the short ends with Sam dragging a large sack that is dripping blood out of a door. So, the implication being that he killed the attacker. And so that was the inspiration for this movie, and obviously the character of Sam. It's, if you just Google Season's Greetings, Michael Dougherty, it's on YouTube. It's just a couple minutes. It's a little fun, cute little thing.
So, adorable. Yeah. Killer child.
Yeah.
Nothing cuter.
I mean, let's face it. Sam, he is kind of cute, right? Like, he makes those cute little sounds. And
he's wearing feety pajamas. Of course he's cute.
Yeah, he's cute. And as long as you don't disrespect the traditions of Halloween, you have nothing to worry about.
Never will.
Yeah.
Never.
So Briana kind of got ahead of my second flesh wound a little bit. This was actually supposed to be released in 2007. I think IMDb has 2007 because it did premiere at a film festival that year. And it was very well received at the film festival. People were really excited. People were really hyped for the movie. But then, without any warning, without any explanation, Warner Brothers just pulled it from its release slot. And it came out on DVD 2 years later. There's speculation about why it was. Bryan Singer was involved as a producer in this movie. And Superman Returns, which Bryan Singer did, was a massive flop right before they pulled this from the release schedule. So some people think that might have something to do with it. Spoiler alert, a bunch of kids die. So some people think maybe they were reluctant to release a movie that had like 7, 8, 9 children dying. But either way. Oh yeah, and the last theory is that they didn't want it to compete with Saw 4 at the box office, which is, I have my own feelings on the Saw franchise.
Saw 4, okay.
Yeah, I have my own feeling on the Saw franchise, but the fact that it might have possibly cost us just like a great horror release for its 4th sequel is really just confirmation for everything I hate about the Saw franchise and franchised horror in general, I feel like. Those are kind of my 2 little fun flesh wounds. The last little easy one is just that a sequel was actually announced in 2013, but no word has been given about it since.
Yeah.
The director actually recently said that he would still be open to doing it, but it doesn't look like it's going anywhere, and that's fine. Like I just kind of said about Saw, we don't need a sequel. It's a great movie, and I would like more of the same, but maybe let's do like Valentine's Day next,
So my review that I found, or one of them, talks a little bit about that as well, including the sequel. And I just think it's been way too long. I don't like when they do this. Like they did it with Anchorman, they did it with Zoolander. It's too long. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I tend to agree, though. I mean, with how well Michael Dougherty did with the first one and the short and his passion for this project, if they did ever go forward with it, I would like to think and hope that it would be faithful and good. But yeah, you're right. There's really no guarantee after, 14, 15 years.
Do you want to get into the film discussion?
Yeah. Unless you have anything else to add, let's dive right in.
All right. So we begin with a Halloween safety video, and it's in black and white. It's giving off like major 50s vibes.
Yeah, this is like one of those film reels they showed kids in school in the 50s.
And I think they used this in the trailer that I saw in 300, because when I saw it, I was like, I hate this already. Why are we doing this? Which, by the way, I think before we started, I already was regretting. I thought I saw you typing, so I thought you wrote exactly what I said, but I guess not. But I was like, oh no, what are we doing? I don't want to do this. We watched this at night, everyone. That's rare. That's gonna be rare. Anyway, so it flashes to like a jack-o'-lantern with a scary face and scary music.
Which made Briana scream, even though it was just a shot of a static jack-o'-lantern.
It jumped to it, And then it's Halloween night. We see kids trick-or-treating. Something this movie does a few times is like this limited view where we're like following a child-size perspective, or we're like following feet, which always makes me feel very unsettled. I do not like a limited scope of view. Makes me nervous.
Yeah, you can't see all that danger on your periph.
Exactly. I need the periph. A couple is in costume and they're walking home from a party, I assume because they're drunk.
Yeah, they're talking about how drunk they are, so either they're coming home from a party or they have serious problems.
Or it's just Tuesday for them, who knows?
Yeah.
She's immediately irritated and he is being playful. She talks about having to take down all of the decor in the front yard, and it is highly decorated. Next level, amazingly decorated. And it is Halloween night. and she wants to take the stuff down right now, which is stupid. And he's like, no, let's bang, is basically what his vibe is at.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a very confusing scene for me. This is probably the only scene in the movie that makes me kind of annoyed because, like, why do we have all these decorations up if she hates them so much? You know, she makes it a big point about how these decorations need to come down immediately. Her mother's going to be here in the morning, and if she sees that, she'll throw a fit.
Yeah.
But then she also, so I'm like, okay, that's why she wants them down. But then she also mentions how much she hates Halloween. And she makes it very clear she has no time for the holiday. And so, like, why are these decorations up in the first place? You don't have to do it, but maybe you do in that town. Who knows?
Yeah, well, she's playing that character who lives in Halloweentown and wishes she didn't live in Halloweentown.
I mean, she could try not living in Halloweentown.
Well, her dumb husband won't let her, obviously, because he's very much an idiot.
Yeah, he's kind of a dick.
She kicks a jack-o'-lantern. Or no, she blows out the jack-o'-lantern. Someone else kicks a jack-o'-lantern later. She blows out the jack-o'-lantern even though her husband is telling her it's a tradition, don't do it. Someone's going to be upset. And meanwhile, we're kind of seeing part of this from across the street. Someone else is watching this, and we're seeing it through their view. We're seeing it through their burlap mask. And when she blows out the jack-o'-lantern, the viewer gasps. So it's like a little child sound gasping, which it's Sam. As the couple gets to their front door, he's getting even more flirty, and she's just getting increasingly annoyed. She is my least favorite portrayal of a woman. She is Deborah from Everybody Loves Raymond, and he is my least favorite portrayal of a man, which is Raymond from Everybody Loves Raymond.
So you just hate Everybody Loves Raymond?
No, I actually like that show, but I hated the trope of the woman being annoyed at the husband who always wants to have sex and the mom or the woman who never wants to have sex. And that's what's happening right now. She's just permanently annoyed by her dumb husband.
See, I don't know if I agree with you there, because to get into, you know, the continuation of this scene a little bit, you know, he's trying to get in her pants, and she's like, no, I have to take all these decorations down. We have to take all these decorations down. Come on, let's do it. He keeps, you know, pestering her, and finally she's like, okay, you go inside. I'm going to take them down. And then there's like a moment, and she's like, you know what? Put on the tape. I'm going to come in after I take the decorations down.
Yeah, because he acts like he's been rejected and he's all sad. So she gives in.
Right, but what my point is, this is like 2008 in, it is Ohio, so maybe they're not like the most technologically advanced, but this is a couple that owns and like just has what they call the tape of VHS pornography. That is not the tape of a couple that doesn't have sex. Like nobody that doesn't have sex is gonna have a tape that they watch while they have sex.
Okay, fair. But she's still just being that female character.
For sure. I mean, he just wore her down. I'm just saying, I don't think it represents their relationship as a whole.
No.
I could totally be wrong.
No, it's just, they're just being those stereotypical characters that are just annoying.
Yes, but just to hit on that again, they have a VHS tape of pornography that they put in while they have sex. Like I was never one for watching pornography, like, while doing things with my partner, but I imagine that if I were, and it were a VHS, I would probably just be distracted by the terrible resolution the whole time. And I would just be like, why don't we just go to Pornhub?
It's also called Nature Special.
Well, that's just a label to throw people off. I don't think the porn is actually called Nature Special.
Okay, well, while he goes on and puts on the Nature Special, she goes to the front yard by herself to clean up the entire yard. And I really can't explain enough how decorated this yard is. It's going to take her 3 hours to get this lawn done.
Oh, easy. She'll probably still be there when the sun comes up.
Right. So as she's cleaning up, she's taking sheets off of, like, it's like wood propped up like a scarecrow. So it's like there's like one piece down and then another piece across, and then there's a sheet over it so that it looks like a ghost, basically.
If you guys could see Briana's hands right now, you would have a perfect image of what this thing looks like.
And there's several of those in the yard. And she's just whipping the sheets off, like pulling them off. She takes some time to kind of like look at some kids who are scurrying around, and she smiles, and then she notices someone else staring at her from across the street.
Yes, and Briana's reaction when they show this character was, oh my God, 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 oh my God.
I don't like that. I don't like the staring from across the street in a mask.
Yeah, and he had just like a plain white mask on, like the kind of mask you see in like The Purge or something, or The Strangers.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like a plain white, no like character or anything.
Yes, which is somehow worse. But it's a fake out. He is just standing there waiting for his friends to pick him up in a car, which they do, and he's like a teenager. He gets in the car and he goes. So she's like, okay, cool, everything's fine. So you're kind of relaxed. You see that and you're like, okay, she's fine, everything's good. But then as soon as you relax, if you're me, she gets attacked as she pulls off another sheet. Whatever is attacking her is they're under the sheet together, and it's kind of like squealing, like it's making weird squealing noises. She just gets like slashed in the neck by a sharp pumpkin lollipop.
That's right, a sharp pumpkin lollipop.
So she's in the sheet and her body gets pushed into the sidewalk, and a bunch of kids are walking and they just see it, and then it kind of saturates with blood and they scream and just run. Meanwhile, her useless husband, he's passed out, and he wakes up kind of wondering where his wife is.
And at this point, Briana goes, ugh, what a loser.
I mean, exactly what I thought. He heads outside and sees a limb hanging from a tree, and he decides to inspect this, even though they have several other limbs hanging from trees.
Yes, they had some fake limbs hanging from trees, but the ones that I saw before this were feet. And you had this is her hand, and you have a very clear shot of her ring.
Yeah, but he didn't notice any of that because he just didn't touch it or anything. And then he gets distracted by a bright orange light behind him, which is just like one of those decorations that they have. It's just like lit up orange. So he turns around to look at that, like, why is it lit up orange? And he tentatively pulls off the sheet, and it's his wife. It's her head. Her eyes are huge, and her mouth is propped open, like very wide horizontally, with the lollipop that slashed her neck.
I mean, it's an awesome scene, to be honest. And it's not nearly as gruesome as it sounds. You know, it's a fast shot. They're not like super gory effects.
It's kind of comical because of the way her face is.
It's good old-fashioned fun.
And then we get the credits. So it's been all this, and we haven't gotten the credits yet. And they're like a comic book.
Yeah, love the credits. As far as I know, not based on a comic book at all. I think it was just a stylistic choice. And I think one that suited the movie very well.
Yeah, it was. I read that in one of the reviews. All right, after the credits, we hit Halloweentown. That's what I'm unofficially calling it. We're moving through a crowd, and we're following the feet of someone who's walking with like a sack full of candy. It's all grimy at the bottom from just being dragged, and I kind of just felt like this was a small detail to set the tone for the film, because it was just we were focusing on that bag, and I actually assumed we would pan up to see who the person was, but we don't. It's a huge party in the streets. We see a news station is covering the shenanigans, and it's just everyone's partying like it's Mardi Gras, basically.
Yeah, they say they're in Warren Valley, Ohio, and they mention that it's just like Halloween is super serious here. They always have like the biggest parties, and once a year, people descend upon the town. And it truly does. Like, I love Halloween. You know, obviously, like, I'm doing this podcast, so Halloween would be right in my wheelhouse. But I would hate living in this town for Halloween. I absolutely despise it.
It's like the Salem of the Midwest.
Yeah, I would hate to live in Salem, too.
But guess what? I didn't hear any of that. And so you said this took place in Ohio. The review I read said this took place in Ohio. And I said, how the hell does anyone know this took place in Ohio?
It was on the screen briefly in like the bottom corner. It said Warren Valley, Ohio. You were probably writing.
I was writing notes, and also just generally like I don't need to pay attention to this newscaster because she's not going to do anything scary. So my brain did not take in anything that she said.
That's a dangerous mindset for a horror movie. The second you let your guard down is when something's going to happen.
True. We hear a conversation between some college-age girls. They're in a Halloween store, and they're talking about boys' parties. And basically, you can already tell that their characters are going to be those slutty early 2000s movie girl people. That's the vibe I'm getting from them. Okay,
but right up top here, I have a bit of an issue with this because it is Halloween.
Exactly.
Like, these girls are in this store trying on costumes on Halloween. Now, we went to a Spirit Halloween today, which like is... What's today, the 25th? It's less than a week before Halloween, and the place was practically empty. So maybe this town takes it very seriously. Maybe they stock up better than your local Spirit. But it was just so annoying to me that it is night on Halloween, and they're just buying costumes now.
So we are watching this through like a small person's perspective, and then we can see that it's a child looking through a peephole at the girls.
And he is, Briana told me, credited as Peeping Tommy and played by the same child that plays Sam. So, if you want to see his face and maybe that'll take away some of those nightmares, just watch that scene. You'll be fine.
3 of the girls come out excitedly to show each other their costumes, and one of them isn't excited. She thinks that they'll laugh. She comes out and she's dressed as Little Red Riding Hood. Not sure why they would laugh. I mean, she looks fine. Maybe it's because she's slightly more demure than the other costumes. I don't know.
Well, I want to rewind just a little bit. They actually, when they're changing, they have a really funny conversation to me about Halloween. So apparently they go somewhere big every year and have they do a big Halloween thing, and they're talking about their past conquests. And one of the girls says playfully to another, and this is loudly through a dressing room door, she's like, oh, and last year you took home a girl. And the girl says, whatever, they all taste the same to me. At which point a mom very loudly bangs on the dressing room door and says, there are children out here. And I just thought, 2007, this is before gay marriage is legal, is very, very forward-thinking moment.
Totally. That's exactly what they were going for.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that this movie is the reason they legalized gay marriage, but, it didn't hurt.
True. Little Red Riding Hood is Anna Paquin, by the way. And again, apparently she's named Lori. I'm never calling her that. Her name is Red throughout the entire podcast. As they check out, Cinderella, who is one of the other girls, she flirts with the cashier and she says they're only in town for one night, specifically for a party, and he's invited. And he says that he'll come. Next, we see a kid who's knocking jack-o'-lanterns off of fences like a little asshole. And he looks at a house and gets a smirk on his face. And I think it's because he notices that they left out just a bowl of candy, with the sign that says take only one.
And not just candy. These are full-size bars, guys. This is the house that you wanted to go to when you were a kid, because they were all fictional candy. I imagine they couldn't get the licensing to Snickers or whatever, but they were full-size bars. And that's generous.
And just a word, on being the house that leaves out the bowl, I get too nervous to do this because I don't want what I imagine is going to happen, which is I'm going to set my bowl out, and in the words of my grandma, some cruddy teenager is just going to come, dump that bowl into their sack, and everyone else is left with nothing, and we're the house that didn't leave any candy out.
So I'm going to disagree with you there. One, I just believe in the goodness of mankind a little more than you do, I guess. I don't think that would happen.
I'm rolling my eyes so hard.
But 2, and this is the point that I think is really going to reach you. I don't know how you're going to dispute this. If we left out a bowl with candy and a sign that said, please take one, then if somebody came up and they would see that, they would know. If I came up to a bowl that said, please take one, and it were empty, my immediate thought would be the person behind me or in front of me just took all the candy. And I wouldn't blame the homeowners. I wouldn't egg their house.
Okay. Just the lesson here is kids, take 3. You don't have to take 1. Take 3. All right? Just take 3.
I'm sorry. That's a really weird way to tell me I'm right.
You're so rude. Anyway, on the stoop, the kid spots a jack-o'-lantern with a giant knife through the eye hole, and he's kind of put off by it, but he's like, whatever, I'm going to take this candy. And while he digs in, a grown-up arrives and says, that can't be good for your diabetes, Charlie. Immediately getting creepy vibes from him.
That's actually the note I have is creepy vibe immediately. So, yeah, for sure. And the way he says it is just, that can't be good for your diabetes, Charlie.
Yeah.
And it drips with threat. I'm giddy watching this,
And he makes Charlie sit. And that's the end for now. So we go back to the girls. They're kind of making fun of Red for being a virgin, it sounds like, especially because she wants her first time to be special. And they're all kind of like, it doesn't matter. And you know what? It doesn't, okay? Virginity is just the patriarchy. It doesn't matter. I mean, you want it to be meaningful, but also nothing's taken away. It's fine. Whatever.
Wow.
They're encouraging her to be more flirty, and they demonstrate by talking to a couple of the guys that were loading the equipment from the news report. I don't know. And they go, that's some big equipment you got there. And then they invite them to the party. So flirty.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Halloween and I'm done working and I don't have any plans, but that's the other thing. How do these guys not have plans? Like, these are two, like, mid-20s, relatively good-looking dudes. They work for a news station. They probably do pretty well for themselves, and they don't have any plans at Halloween?
Yeah, but
Come
maybe
on.
their plans didn't include a guarantee, and these girls seem like a guarantee.
That's true. And also, what, they're both single? I mean, neither one of these guys is married, has a kid, has a house.
No rules in Halloweentown.
Yeah, well, it's just convenient is all I'm saying.
All right, back to Charlie. The creepy grown-up pulls out the knife from the pumpkin and starts carving. He's going on about how his father taught him to respect the dead because this is the one night when they can pay us a visit. Freaking the kid out, but he's also, Charlie's just shrugging it off and housing Candy.
Yeah, and Mr. Wilkins is being, and that's his name, by the way, Principal Wilkins.
I was gonna save that for later.
Okay, you can edit this out. The man is being very aggressive with the knife. He is just like he's not stabbing Charlie, obviously, but when he's cutting these eyes in the mouth, he's just going so much harder than he needs to, and it's definitely putting Charlie off a little bit.
And he says that the traditions were created to protect us, but no one cares anymore. And then conveniently, Charlie starts choking and just vomiting, like projectile vomiting blood.
Yeah, and the man shows no reaction. This is not a surprise to him.
Yeah. He says, oh, and one more tradition, always read the labels. And the kid, passes out on his lap.
That's not what he said.
What does he say?
He said, the most important Halloween tradition is to check your candy.
I just literally made up a quote.
You did. He said to check your candy, for razor blades or for poison. But fun fact, for those of you that don't know, the whole poison candy, razor blade thing, it stems from a single incident where a child got poisoned by a pixie stick. They ate a pixie stick. I believe they died. But turned out the father had done it. So that's the only time, the only documented incident of poison candy. So I'm not saying don't take your kids and check their candy, but when I was young, you could bring it to the hospital to get x-rayed, and I just think that's satanic panic nonsense. That's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Or people who think there's going to be drugs in the candy. If I had drugs, I'm certainly not putting it in candy and giving it to children. I'm doing it myself.
That's a waste.
So, yeah, just one of my least favorite urban myths. Sorry, it really triggered me there.
We're helping so many people, I feel like, in this episode. He lugs him inside, and as he's moving the body, Charlie just keeps puking more blood, and it's all over his shirt. And meanwhile, a group come to the door, knocking on it for candy, and he opens it after getting the body out of the way. And the kids scream, but then they laugh, and they're like, oh, great costume, Mr. Wilkins, because he's their principal.
Yeah, they say Principal Wilkins, to make that clear.
Oh my God, stop correcting my quotes. How did I write these quotes wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be correcting your quotes, Briana, but we owe it to our 4 listeners to accurately quote this movie.
The kids ask for his jack-o'-lantern, and when he asks if they're going to smash it, they say no, it's for UNICEF.
Yeah, it's for a scavenger hunt for UNICEF.
One of the kids is dressed like a pirate, and he seems kind of unsure. I feel like he thinks that the blood looks too real or something like that. And the camera pans up at Principal Wilkins from his perspective, kind of domineering looking. They leave, and then behind them is Sam, and he's dressed in his little orange onesie with a burlap mask and covering his whole head. And I think the mask is supposed to be a pumpkin, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. I love it though. When we were in Spirit earlier today, I was saying to Briana, if we had a child, we would dress him up as Sam for Halloween. So I don't know what the costume's supposed to be, but I love it so much. We went to a wax museum in Salem actually with horror movie monsters, and they had a little wax statue of Sam, and it was probably my favorite bit.
Back to the girls. They're all three of them are getting into the van, right?
Yeah, everyone but
Red.
Anna Paquin here is getting into the van.
So she's alone, I guess, because she has to find a date. That's required.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be the only single person at a party. That's miserable.
Truly.
I'm sure we've both been there.
Back to Wilkins. He grabs a knife in the kitchen and goes into the yard. And there's a body all wrapped up and a ditch. In this process, he's interrupted by his child coming home. He announces loudly from the window that he's returned from trick-or-treating.
Principal Wilkins has this is a 6-foot grave. Like, it is a very neatly dug hole, and it's already dug well before Charlie is dead. So, you kind of, even before you see that there is a second body in there, you see that, hey, he's planned this. This is something either he does all the time or has planned to do today.
At least annually, yeah.
Yeah.
He distracts his kid and dumps the body into the ditch, and that's where we see that there's another body already there.
Yeah, he tells his son to go watch Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And his son's like 8 or 9, and his response is, Charlie Brown's an asshole. And he doesn't really argue that point, I noticed. He's just kind of like, yeah, I guess so.
Meanwhile, the neighbor's dog is barking, so to shut it up, he cuts off like a finger from one of the bodies and tosses it to the dog.
And that's just sloppy. I mean, somebody's going to find that finger eventually, right?
Exactly. The neighbor comes out calling for Spike, and
Mr. Krieg.
Totally giving off that grumpy old man vibe. Wilkins jumps into the ditch to hide, but the kid is still alive, wrapped up in the tarp, so he screams. And the neighbor hears that, and so he's now peeping through the fence and says, "What are you doing in the ditch? You hiding a body?" And Wilkins, eventually they have a whole conversation. He gets him to leave him alone. And the neighbor, and I missed this, but the neighbor for some reason ends the conversation with "screw you," but I don't know why. Is there anything in particular about their conversation?
I think he says screw you because it is established at this point that Mr. Krieg hates Halloween. He is like miserable, and he's like, I just want to sleep through this day.
We'll find out why he hates Halloween. Okay, so the kid in the ditch continues to fight, and once again, his son interrupts from the window asking to go to a parade. Why is there a parade to be had? It's night.
This is Halloweentown.
Very much night.
It's the Halloween night parade. I mean, if this is a town where people come from all over the country to celebrate Halloween, they better have a parade at 9 p.m.
No, I want to be at a party at 9 p.m., not at a parade.
Okay, well, 8-year-olds can't drink, Briana.
Who says?
The law?
Anyway, he finally hits the kid hard enough with the end of the shovel to end it. It's brutal. We don't see any of it, though, so it's kind of like you can be removed from it. Now he's watering what looks like, the beginning stages of a garden patch, and that's where he buries bodies. And he's kind of griping to himself about his kid. He's like, "Daddy, I want to go to the parade. Daddy, I wish Mommy was still alive.
Daddy, I want to carve a jack-o'-lantern."
As he goes back inside, the neighbor is yelling against his window pane, saying, "Help me, help me." And he just says, "Screw you," great neighborly help. When he goes in, he's looking for his kid and zones in on a knife, and it's on the counter, and then his kid jumps out to scare him.
Briana goes, "Jesus."
Yeah, for sure. And he says, "Can we go carve pumpkins now?" And he says in a weird tone, like, "Yeah, let's go downstairs." And he grabs the knife and hides it behind his back.
And as they're going downstairs, you can hear screaming coming from somewhere.
What? Really?
Yeah, I think it's Mr. Krieg's house, but you can hear screaming as they're about to go downstairs.
Oh. I think I thought it was like whatever show was being watched. Also, why does the son not care at all about how much blood is on his father's shirt? He's not wearing a costume. He's wearing his work clothes covered in blood.
And also, again, I mean, the answer to this question comes in about 30 seconds from now in movie time. But at this point, you're probably saying to yourself, who carves a pumpkin on the night of Halloween? Again, you're waiting way too long to do these things. This should already be done a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
So we're in the basement, and the kid is at like a table looking at the pumpkin, and he says, "Let's carve a scary face this time." And Wilkins grabs his head, like the son's head, and he stabs something. And I thought it was a fake out. I was like, this obviously he didn't just stab his son in the head, even though it seems like he wants to stab his kid.
Yeah, the whole lead up for the scene, you're led to believe Principal Wilkins is about to murder his own son, which I respect.
So I think it was a fake out, but then the knife they show and it's bloodied. And I was like, oh my God, he did just kill his son. But then we see Charlie's head on a platter.
And Billy says, "Dad, you have to help me with the eyes. I always have trouble with the eyes."
Oh.
The end.
But also, the body that he just buried, was that someone else?
Yeah, I think the person that was still alive was somebody else.
Okay.
Or when he was doing that pounding with the shovel as the person was still like struggling, if that wasn't the other person, it was Charlie, and he was cutting off his head with the tip of the shovel.
Maybe.
You don't really see the dirty work, so we don't know. But either way, awesome dad, just a great dad. He really just spends some quality time with his son. They have a common hobby together. Not the healthiest hobby, but I know a lot of people that grew up differently that would have preferred this to what they had. So really just props to Wilkins for being a fantastic father.
Standout, number one. We now return to the group who had asked for the pumpkin from Mr. Wilkins. And they're probably like 8th graders, like middle school age. And they stop at a house that is answered by a drunk woman, and just sex acts are happening behind her. She offers them alcohol.
Yeah, I kind of got the vibe she was like trying to seduce them, and I know that's like super creepy to even say, but like she was being kind of flirty, and it was weird, and they felt weird about it too.
Yeah, they're horrified and they leave, and as they kind of walk on, they're talking about it, and another kid meets up with them. He has a carriage of pumpkins, and again, we hear one of the girls' names. Her name is Macy. Nope, Lacey. I wrote Lacey once. I called her Macy through the rest of my notes, but her name is Lacey.
And Briana said she got major queen bitch vibes from Lacey. She said she was basically Regina George.
100%. So yes, I'm labeling these children as
the plastics.
Lacey, but the one who comes up with the carriage, he's the hot one. Like, he's a child and he's not hot, but that's who he's supposed to be.
So just to clarify, you find this child hot?
No, but he is supposed to be the hot one. He's supposed to be the one all the girls are fighting over. It's very obvious. They move on. They stop in front of another house that has a front yard full of jack-o'-lanterns, and honestly, it is beautiful. I loved it.
It's way too many. I feel like by the time you're done carving the first or the last one, the first is already rotten. There's far too many jack-o'-lanterns.
And a girl comes out dressed as a witch, and we can already tell she's playing the misfit character. But Hottie is taken with her, and she says she did the pumpkins herself.
I'm sorry, so we're just going to call this child Hottie for the remainder of the movie?
Yes.
Okay.
And she says that she did the pumpkins herself, and he's admiring that. Back to the block party. We're in an alleyway, and 2 people are just making out. And the girl says, let's get another drink. And she takes off her mask. And she reaches to take off the mask of the person she's making out with. And he growls at her and pins her arms up. And then he just starts kissing her all over.
So hot.
And she is enjoying it until she kind of realizes that she's bleeding from everywhere that he has just theoretically kissed her. And he steps back and flashes his vampire teeth, and she screams and runs. Which, as she's running, I'm like, well, he's going to get her. He's going to get her. But she makes it through the alleyway to the crowd of people. She makes it. So I'm like, cool, she's saved. No, the worst thing that you can think happens, which is that she is just murdered in front of a bunch of people who don't even notice that it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's Halloween. They think this is like an act. Hey, great costume, great performance. Nobody thinks this girl is actually dying. Because, I mean, would you? I'm not sure I would. I think I would be like, wow, that's incredible. And then, feel terrible when I saw the news later.
It's just my worst nightmare. She even actually runs into the characters from the beginning, which the annoying wife, by the way, is played by Leslie Bibb. I expected her to live longer because it was Leslie Bibb. So she runs into her and her stupid husband, and he's just like, let's go, babe. And again, people are literally all around her while he murders her. He leaves her body propped up against a store directly next to people who are just too drunk to notice that she's dead. Cool. Back to the kids. Lil Witch is definitely dressed as a witch, but she is definitely a witch. So she is now called Lil Witch. And she's educating the pirate.
Her name is Rhonda. Just for, anybody that's listening that wants to know actual character names. Her name is Rhonda.
When did they say Rhonda?
I don't know. I have it here in my notes, literally the first time they see her. So at some point.
Did you also know that she's mentally challenged?
I kind of got an idea that she might be on the spectrum or something.
I miss everything. The review said that, and I was like, when were we supposed to know that?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay. I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't know, too many people on the spectrum. But if I knew someone that came up to me and said, hey, I just carved 50 jack-o'-lanterns, I would probably assume they were autistic.
Honestly, I was just like, she's a witch. So her mother is a witch. Her whole families are witches. They just did this. That's just what I assumed.
Okay.
But anyway, she's educating the pirate on Samhain and like the origins for it, and his eyes just glaze over like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and this is a very self-reflective moment for me because I'm a big horror fan, big true crime fan, and this just kind of made me think to myself, is this the way people look at me when I talk about murderers?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Perfect. All right, good. Good to know.
So they reach their destination. The kids open a fence and they go into like a dump area that we end up seeing is really a quarry. A quarry, such a hard word to say. Quarry?
It's really not. Quarry.
Quarry?
Quarry.
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 I can't say it. Okay. It's covered in fog, so it looks super spooky. Lacey brought them here to pay respects to the dead, and another girl says, "Oh, this is where that bus massacre happened." And that leads Lacey to tell the story.
The story of the Halloween school bus massacre. I now present for the approval of the Midnight Society.
30 years ago, the school bus was on its usual route, but this wasn't your typical school, and they weren't your typical kids.
Bum, bum, bum.
So we go back in time, and all the kids are wearing these really creepy masks. They're on the school bus. There were 8 of them, and they were different, troubled, disturbed. Every day, parents put their dirty secrets on this bus to drive them to a school outside of town. But that day, the driver took a different route. In the scene, we see this one kid who's counting compulsively, like the houses that the bus passes, I guess, and he notices immediately that they're going the wrong way. And he starts repeating, wrong way, wrong way. And the bus passes Sam. And instead of taking them home...
And keep in mind, it passes Sam, and this is 30 years ago.
Right.
So he's still a little baby 30 years later.
Little baby Sam. And instead of taking them home, he drove to an abandoned rock quarry. What the kids didn't know was that after years, their parents became exhausted and were willing to do anything to ease their burden. So one day, the parents made the driver an offer. And now the bus is now stopped at the edge of the quarry. I literally can't say this word. And he's passing out candy to each of them. They put their money together and asked him to do the unthinkable. It almost worked perfectly. And the kids have cuffs on. So the one who's saying wrong way, he starts to try to escape, saying, home, home, I want to go home, which is really sad. He runs up to the driver's seat while the driver is at the very back, handing out the candy. And he, unfortunately, drives the bus off the cliff, and the bus sinks. The driver was never heard from again. As for the bus, some say it sank so deep that it couldn't be found. Others say the town didn't want it to be found. For all we know, it's still down there, and so are those kids.
Yes, and so what Briana just said was basically word for word the story that Lacey tells in the movie. But when they say the driver was never heard from again or never seen again, you do see him kind of climbing out of the water.
Yes.
You don't see him get out of the water, but you see him kind of just like hanging out on the edge, like with his arms up on land. So, it is heavily implied at this point that the bus driver's still out there somewhere.
Yep. Now we're fully back to the present. That one girl says, "You're so full of shit." And Lacey says 8 victims, 8 jack-o'-lanterns. And they're going to leave each by the water as an offering to those who died. So Hottie looks at the jack-o'-lantern that the little witch is holding and compliments it because it's one that she made. And Lacey rolls her eyes. She's obviously very threatened.
Yeah, she's peanut butter and jealous right now.
3 of them, Hottie, Lacey, and the other girl, they go into the elevator to get to the bottom, leaving Pirate and Lil Witch to wait for the keys to come back up.
How is anybody going to keep track of these characters?
Hottie, Lacey, and the other one. Well, what's the other one's name?
I don't know it.
See, no one knows that name. I think she might have been a fairy. I could call her Fairy. I don't know that she was really a fairy, though. I didn't catch her
You know who was a
costume.
fairy? Anna Paquin in True Blood.
That's true.
Spoilers for like season 5 of True Blood.
When everyone stopped watching. Lil Witch and Pirate are told you have to wait. There's like a limit to the janky elevator. So we'll throw the keys back up. And that's that for now. Back to Red. She's walking through the block party and her phone rings. Cinderella's at the party in the woods and she's impatiently waiting for her sister, who is Red, to get to the party. and Mr. Vampire spots red. We pop back to the kids. The elevator comes back. The two look at it and they look at each other like, oh shit, now we have to go. You can hear the others talking. So as the two are going down in the elevator, you can hear the other three talking, but the fog is so dense that all you can see is the light from the jack-o'-lanterns. And there's a scream, and one by one, the lights go out, which this was like a really cool looking scene. Like, I love how they did this with the fog, and like you can't see anything but the lights, and they just kind of like one by one go out.
Yeah, very well done, as is most of this movie.
I have to say, at this point, I've been thinking the whole time that they are just playing Lil Witch. And I'm like, yeah, they're playing a trick on Lil Witch. I feel like that's what's happening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely they are. And I just want to point out, so on this scene, there's just a weird shot where there's a leaf that's like blown by the wind across the screen. And that made Briana gasp.
It's so stupid. Oh, my God. Okay, they reach the bottom, and Lil Witch says, aren't you coming? And Pirate, like, shakes his head, and he says, no. And he just seems so scared. And she says, so sweetly, she says, okay, don't let the candles go out, and they'll protect you, okay?
Yeah, she is too pure a soul for this world.
I know. And so she kind of goes exploring, and I think you can see someone, like, in the fog. Is that true? Did you notice that?
I didn't notice, to be honest.
So I don't know if that was truly happening or not. But she reaches the water, and she actually sees the bus sticking up out of the water, front end up. Which
immediately raises alarm bells, because this girl just told us the bus was never found. And you'd think if it were half sticking out of the water in the quarry this whole time, the town would have done something about it. But maybe they're just irresponsible. Maybe this is a haunting. Who knows?
You also see some masks that are reminiscent of the story. They're floating in the water. And she kind of looks at it sad, and she reaches in to grab it.
And at this point, Briana says, don't, 10 times, and then goes, oh, as she keeps going, just to keep you all updated on Briana's reactions.
Because once again, I am thinking they're tricking her, but I still know that I'm going to be scared. And also the bus threw me. Seeing the bus, I was like, ooh, maybe this is real.
Yeah, that's the thing, is these kids can't put that bus there.
Exactly.
No matter how hot and sexy that child is, he cannot put a bus in the water.
I never said sexy. Wow. So then something comes out of the water, right? Does it come out of the water? Because I think I'm screaming at this point.
Yeah, you were screaming. You probably didn't see it. But a hand shoots out of the water and grabs Rhonda's hand. And Briana screams and then goes, oh, my God. Oh, my God. And
now she's being chased. And as she's being chased, she passes the pirate who was too afraid to leave the elevator. And he's friggin' being eaten, it looks like. And she drops her glasses. And then she kind of falls into a ditch and hits her head and like knocks herself out. And that's where we hear Hottie say, oh, shit. So, yes, it was a trick. She opens her eyes and she smacks them because she's like, they're in her face, and she keeps running. And then they're like, relax. It's just a trick. They don't even say sorry. It's just a trick. And they're kind of laughing. Lil Witch is crying. Hottie is regretful. And she leans on him. And I'm just like, don't lean on him. He's an asshole. He is acting like he likes you, but then he still participated in this trick on you. And when Lacey sees that, she just rolls her eyes.
I've got it in my notes here. I'm pretty sure it is Macy. Are you sure it's Lacey?
Maybe it's Macy.
I think it's Macy.
I thought I saw Lacey somewhere. Let me look at the IMDb. It's Macy.
So good.
Okay, so that explains why I wrote Lacey once and Macy the rest of the time. Okay, so I was actually right. Macy rolls her eyes, and she sees that one pumpkin is still lit, so she kicks it into the water. Pirate starts asking questions about the bus, like, I don't even remember specifically what he asks, but they just kind of...
Yeah, I mean, he's asking how it got there because, they're playing this prank, and, you could probably assume they've been down here before to kind of, like, plan things and set it up, and, you could probably assume that bus wasn't there. So he kind of says to Macy, hey, how'd that bus get there? She's like, who cares? Whatever, let's go.
Yeah. And then whisperings start happening, and Macy just, she thinks they're screwing with her, and she's like, I'm not in the mood. We go back to Hottie and Lil Witch, and we hear the other three screaming. And so he runs to them, and then Macy says, we have to go. There's other people here. We heard voices. And then he starts hearing the voices, and they start coming out of the water. And now it's real. So scary. One girl gets grabbed, and then the rest are running. They all get to the elevator, and Lil Witch is already in it with the door shut. And they're begging her to let them in. and she's just kind of very stoic and holding the keys, and she moves them like she might let them in, and then she presses the button to go up.
Loved it.
I honestly loved it.
Get your revenge, girl. Show them what they did to you and let them get dismembered by ghouls.
We follow her face as we just hear their screams.
Yeah, I have it written down as the sounds of heinous murder coming from below.
Yikes. Yes, that's exactly it.
And then as she gets off the elevator and she's walking away, you see Sam just walking by, and they stop for a second, they look at each other, and they just continue in opposite directions. And you want to know why? Because Rhonda didn't break any Halloween traditions.
Yeah.
It's the same reason Sam doesn't kill Principal Wilkins in the beginning, because he gave him candy. That's what you're supposed to do on Halloween, so Sam let him live.
Oh, yeah. He just, like, grabs the candy and runs off.
Yeah.
Okay, meanwhile, Red is in the woods. She's walking alone, and I'm sure that's going to be fine. And immediately, as soon as you think that, there's a rustle in the woods. And she says, "I'm not in the mood, so just come out," which was just very Suki Stackhouse of her. Like, that's exactly what Suke would do, which is one of the reasons why she was one of the most annoying characters of all time. We follow her looking around, and as the camera pans back around, we see Mr. Vampire.
At 49 minutes, and Briana screams when we see him.
For sure. And he says, my, what big eyes you have," as he leans in and bites her neck, and she screams.
Fade to black.
Back at the woods party, someone screams, and something falls like from the trees or is thrown through the woods.
Yeah, it just falls from above. You have no idea if it was just like hanging out in a tree or it was just chucked over.
And it looks like Red because it's a red cape, and you would think it's her because she was obviously just killed by Mr. Vampire. But as the girls, like Cinderella, walks over to inspect this red heap, we find that it is Mr. Vampire, who says, "Please help me." Red comes out of the woods without her cape. Her neck is bloody, and so Cinderella says, "You're late. What happened?" And Red says, "I did what they told me to do. Played hard to get." And one of the other girls talks to Mr. Vampire, and she pulls out his fake teeth and pulls off his mask, and it's none other than Principal Wilkins.
Principal Wilkins. So he kills a child, carves that child's face with his son, and then goes and kills a woman in a back alley, and then follows Anna Paquin into the woods to try and kill her. I don't want to, like, speculate, but I think he might have some sort of problem.
Maybe. She's being kind of coy with him, like this is all very normal. And he looks around and sees a bunch of dead men everywhere, and he says, "Who are you people?" And then he screams because there's like a bone just shooting out of his leg.
And at this point, this is when Briana turns to me and says, "I think I like this movie." And I don't know why. I don't know what it was about that scene, but this was the scene where Briana decided she really liked this movie.
Girl power. This was just a good movie. I don't know. It just wasn't at all what I expected it to be.
Yeah. And when they show that bone sticking out of his skin, it's kind of a quick close-up shot. And Briana says, "Oh my God, she bit his dick off?" And no, it's clearly a bone poking out of his leg. I have no idea where she got that from.
I just thought it was a pelvis shot, not like all the way down to the leg. I don't know. I think I was in this very girl power mode as well. So I was like, yeah, that's what she did. Red is nervous, but Cindy is like, "You'll be fine." Cindy as in Cinderella. "You'll be fine." She straddles the principal and says, "It's my first time, so bear with me." Now a montage begins with Sweet Dreams by Marilyn Manson playing. Perfect song. And unfortunately, we can never listen to it again because he ruined it. But the girls are kind of dancing, and they're taking off pieces of clothing, and they're starting to transform. We see like their eyes transform and their nails, and we see bones coming out. And then we see like a tattoo on their backs that's in Latin. And, you know, they're slashing each other's backs, and just skin starts coming off. And I wrote the word shedding, but shedding doesn't quite explain what's happening, because if you would see like a snake shedding its skin, it's kind of gross, but like, you know, it's thin and papery. This is just globs of skin being thrown every which way coming off of their bodies. It's nasty. And they're werewolves.
Yeah. In Soviet Russia, werewolf is Anna Paquin. True Blood. You can cut that out. You didn't laugh at it. I don't want that in the podcast anymore.
Okay. Red says, my, what big eyes you have. And then she rips into him, still in her human form. And then we kind of pan over to Sam, just watching this entire scene from the sidelines. He's always there.
He's just taking it all in. I have a feeling this is his kind of party. And he's like, I don't know what I just stumbled into, but I am here for a good time.
Scene change, and we get that little comic book script that says, earlier, 3 kids are tentatively standing outside of an unlit house. They open the gate and walk up to ring the bell. And I'm like, here's the rule, kid. No light, no candy.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Why are you wasting your time?
Even if this house is so creepy, though, like the yard is unkempt and it's just very creepy. Like, even if there were a light on, I'd probably be like, no, I don't need that much candy. And I would skip this house. But yeah, no light on, you don't go ring the doorbell or knock. That's just like common sense.
From inside, we hear someone struggling to breathe, and the door opens, and the kids say trick or treat, but we hear growling, and we see glowing eyes. They scream, and they run, and the glowing eyes chase them. But it's just Spike, the grumpy neighbor's dog.
Oh, he's such a good boy.
Yeah. And he dressed up the dog, not because he likes Halloween, but because he wants to scare the kids. In the house, he's burning old photographs, and he's also watching a cooking show.
It's not a cooking show. It's an infomercial for
Yes.
Ron Popeil. Set it and forget it.
But the
classic.
meat looks nasty.
I
Did
mean,
you notice this?
No, it looked fine.
I think, okay, so we'll get back to that. He starts eating candy from a kid who like dropped their sack or whatever, probably when they ran.
when the kids ran away screaming from the glowing eyes in the dark, one of the kids dropped their candy. And so Krieg, having just broken the tradition of not giving out candy and then stealing a kid's candy, is just delighting in this.
But also he eats the candy and he thinks it's disgusting. He stops eating it.
Yeah, he takes like one bite and he's like, oh, what's this trash? And then just like puts it on the table.
Yeah, and then guzzles his like whiskey out of the bottle.
Like a man.
And so now he's kind of flipping channels. He sees a segment on the news, the segment that we saw earlier, about what Halloween is and blah, 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 blah. And he's just grumbling. He changes the channel. So clearly, very clearly he hates Halloween. And he returns it to that infomercial, and now they're cutting into the meat. And I just thought it looked so grotesque. And I feel like that was on purpose.
No. I mean, it looked normal to me. Maybe I wasn't looking close enough. I mean, I've seen it a few times. I never really noticed that. It just seemed, maybe this is one of those things where like I'm just familiar with that infomercial, so my brain just kind of went on autopilot for it.
Maybe.
But
I don't know. I think why else were they showing it to us? I just feel like, again, it's one of those small setting the tone things. Like it just it looked nasty.
All right.
But Spike starts barking, and we hear the gate. So he looks outside, and an egg hits the window. And then we see a kid, like the shadow of a kid, run by and laugh.
And as the egg hits the window, Briana gives out a little yelp. It was startling for her.
For sure. He grabs a bat, and Spike keeps barking. And he finds him in the backyard. And now we're at the scene that we've seen earlier from Mr. Wilkins' perspective. So we're now seeing it from Mr. Krieg. Is that his name? Krieg's perspective. In the part where Mr. Krieg is peeking through the fence at Mr. Wilkins in the ditch, we're actually watching that from Sam's perspective because we see it behind the burlap mask again. So back inside, Spike continues to bark. Oh, I noticed he had so many locks, and I just thought that's great. Like, yeah, it's because he's a shut-in, but it's actually admirable. Safety, love those locks.
Yeah, it just seems like a hassle. Like, do you want to have to stand at your door for 5 minutes before you leave or come home?
Yeah,
like,
because
just to lock
safety
all those
is
locks?
never a hassle. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're pretty safe, I think.
So he goes to the front, and it's now full of jack-o'-lanterns. Just
yeah,
too
I mean,
many.
it puts Rhonda's yard to shame.
The dog is continuing to bark and now is inside at the stairs. And we see through the house that the dog door is swaying. Now, the man has 27 locks, but he also has a dog door.
Yeah, this is baffling to me. And like, I would, as much crap as I just gave you for the lock thing, I would never have a dog door. That's insane. You're just asking for tiny intruders.
And he hears steps upstairs. So he gets his gun and he loads it. He goes up the stairs slow, and I am fully prepping to just be scared out of my mind at this point.
Yeah, and actually at one point before he starts going up the stairs, you see Sam run by in the background across the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
And the only reason I remember that is because you also yelled at that.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, because the light also burst. He tried to turn the light on and it bursts, and Sam runs. He gets up there, he gets into a bedroom, and something is moving under the sheets. It's a skeleton hand.
Yeah, it's like a robot, like, trick hand. Yeah. And it's just, like, moving its fingers, like, opening and closing them just to creep him out, I guess.
And then in the corner, a jack-o'-lantern lights up in like big ass fire. And there's writing all over the wall.
Yeah, it just says trick or treat over and over again. Notably, it says or, not like the movie title.
Yeah.
But yeah.
From under the bed, Sam slices his leg and he just goes down.
Yeah, he gets him like right in the Achilles tendon, which, little side story, happens in Pet Sematary. The original, or maybe it's Pet Sematary 2. I don't remember, but it happens in one of those movies. And that was always one of the most traumatic scenes for me because like the person is getting off their bed and there's just like underneath the bed and they cut his, and it's not pleasant at all. And I don't know if this was like an intentional callback, but it just really reminded me of that because that was always something that stuck in my head and made me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, as he's down, we see like a little hand just shoot up. And it's just such a cute little hand. I think I said out loud, he's so cute. And then he comes out. So Sam comes out from behind the bed and he does that like standing head tilt thing, which I hate when scary figures do this because it creeps me the hell out.
Yeah, and I'll steal the little comparison from one of my favorite podcasts, Last Podcast on the Left. And Marcus calls it the new metal head tilt because like every guitarist from like the early 2000s, like Mudvayne and Limp Bizkit and Korn, you watch those music videos, they all did that head tilt into the camera every single time.
It looked less scary when they did it though.
I don't know. I think the Mudvayne one would creep you out.
Oh, okay. I don't even know that band, so probably. Okay, Sam unwraps a candy bar, which I didn't understand this. It seems to like shock Mr. Krieg. Did you notice this?
No.
He like unwraps a candy bar and that is what makes him shoot at him. But he, I don't know, misses or Sam disappears and also the jack-o'-lantern disappears. He gets to the stairs, but he falls down the stairs because it's like full of candy and glass and razors. And he tries to get out of the house, but his hands are like all cut up and full of glass. So unlocking those 27 locks is very painful. And then meanwhile, Sam is on the ceiling.
Yeah, he's like crawling right above him.
Full on spider crawling.
It's in many other contexts, like if this were a different movie or the beginning of the movie before you kind of get in your like fun mood, this is a really creepy thing. Like just the idea of like this like little child that's like crawling on the ceiling above you about to drop down like a koala and murder you.
Which is exactly what he does. He strangles him. But in the struggle, Mr. Krieg rips off the mask and it's a fucking alien?
No, it's a pumpkin. He's a pumpkin.
It's a pumpkin?
Yes, it's a jack-o'-lantern.
His face is brown and like wilted.
I can't believe I have to do this.
He's whipping out his phone and showing me an image. We just saw the head in the store today and it's not a pumpkin. Okay. I feel like that's more circular, spherical than what his face actually is. Okay, send that image to me. We're going to add that to the story and we're going to do a poll.
Okay.
Alien or pumpkin? He gets Sam off of him.
Yeah, he actually like bucks his back and throws Sam off him, and Sam goes like flying against a mirror and it shatters. It's really cool, actually.
Well, that's when he shot him.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. You're right. Sorry.
So he gets him off and then he shoots him, and the shooting him threw him across the house.
Yeah. Oh, no. So he throws him off his back and he hits a mirror and then he shoots him and it slides him back across the house against the wall.
Yeah.
But it's like it's the kind of fighting that you rarely see in a horror movie. Like you don't ever see a victim fight back this much, and especially against a child. So it's fun.
Yeah. Child size. I mean, he's not a child. He gets to the body and he shoots it 2 more times, and the guts are pumpkin. Like it's not even gross because it's pumpkin. He goes to his rotary phone and tries to call 911, but the line cuts.
Did you ever use a rotary phone when you were a kid?
Yes, the phone that well, not actually to call anybody, but the phone that we have downstairs was my grandma's, and I would play with that all the time.
Right, but I mean, you didn't actually make a phone call?
No, I've never actually made a phone call.
A friend of mine, they had a rotary phone in their house, and
it seems too hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard. It's just tedious.
Yeah.
And also, you can't like buy things. Do you remember those commercials from when you were a kid? And it was like, call 1-800, blah, 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 but you have to use a touch-tone phone.
Oh. I never thought about what they were referring to when they said touch tone. I just thought, yeah, the phone. I didn't have a rotary phone. We lived in modern times in my household.
I guess so. But getting back to it. So he calls 911. The operator picks up and says, 911, please hold. Like, I understand there's a finite amount of 911 operators, but like, Does that happen?
Apparently.
I mean, I don't think I've ever had to call 911, so.
Yeah, thankfully. Knock on wood. But anyway, he gets through again, and then the line cuts. So something's happening, even though Sam appears to be dead. And what we see is a hand. A hand is walking because that stabs him in the leg. He says, he at that point, he says, "You gotta be fucking kidding me."
Yeah, I mean, that's a real reaction. Like, if you just fought this demon child and you killed it, and then its hand is like cutting your phone cord and then coming back and trying to attack you, that is the exact response anyone would have.
Yeah, and then the hand reattaches to the body and the body comes back to life. And at this point, Krieg should just call it. You got emphysema, you're an alcoholic, you hate everything, you're a shut-in.
So what
are we fighting for?
Let me just ask you, though. So do you remember this hand scene? Do you remember when the hand kind of crawls back to Sam and reattaches?
Yeah.
Do you remember what is like coming out of like the hand or the stump of his arm?
No.
It's pumpkin guts. There's pumpkin guts everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I said because when he shoots him 2 more times, we see pumpkin guts flying everywhere.
Right. Pumpkin guts.
Yeah.
He's a pumpkin.
Okay, I know that. But I'm telling you that head in the movie, that image that you showed me is not the same image as the movie. It was an alien face.
No, it wasn't.
It was more like E.T. than a pumpkin.
She's wrong, guys.
Sam bites into the pumpkin lollipop that we saw at the beginning, and he makes it into a sharp. And the man Mr. Krieg reaches for the bottle that he was drinking from earlier, and he smashes it to make his own little sharp. But Sam breaks his hand, and he stabs Krieg, but it hits the candy bar. So when he had grabbed for the bottle, all the stuff that was on that table fell, including the candy bar that he was eating earlier. When he gets stabbed, it stabs the candy bar. Now, this makes Sam, I don't understand. He just leaves. Why?
Well, that's the Halloween tradition fulfilled. So it's established that Sam shows up and kills people or punishes them when they break Halloween tradition. And in this case, it was Mr. Krieg refusing to give kids candy. So when this happened, he essentially gave Sam candy. Sam got his piece of candy, so he left. That's what he's there for. He's there to make sure that the rules of Halloween are followed, and the rules are you give kids candy. He gave him candy. He went home.
Interesting. Okay. The door opens and closes by itself. That's it. Sam's done. The camera pans over to the fireplace, which was burning the pictures, and that's where we learn that Mr. Krieg, the man who hates Halloween, is the school bus driver.
From the Halloween school bus massacre.
Yes.
Yeah. Great reveal. I did not see it coming. I'm usually pretty good at seeing twists in movies. This one hit me from nowhere. What about you?
I did not think about that at all whatsoever. Forgot about the man from the bus driver. Forgot about him completely. Yeah. And then thought he should have died. Like he should have been killed by Sam.
Yeah. But I mean, so that, that is a very reasonable reason to hate Halloween. And let me pose this question to you. If you are Mr. Krieg, how much money does it take to get you to kill those children?
What a question to pose. There's no money.
So you'd do it for free?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now we do one of those scene cuts again, and it says now later. So more kids come up to Krieg's house, which now seems to be open for business because of the jack-o'-lantern. So kids think, we can get some candy here. But also it has to be late now. Like it has to be late. And kids are still actively trick-or-treating. Trick-or-treat ends at like 7:30 here, but it has got to be 11 and the kids are still going ham.
Well, maybe this is just one of those, it's a big Halloween town, so it's safe. They do this every year. It's fine.
It's super safe, yeah.
Yeah.
He gives them candy, so he has learned his lesson.
Some say his heart grew 3 sizes that day.
Next door, the son is dressed, Mr. Wilkins' son. What's his name again?
Billy.
Never heard them say that. Billy is dressed in Mr. Wilkins' bloody shirt. He's also wearing glasses and he's just giving out candy. Weird. And then Lil Witch is walking home. She almost gets hit by a car. That car is the werewolf girls. Sam and Krieg kind of look at each other from across the street. That's that for them. And then we see the wife and the husband from the beginning. And we kind of go through that scene again. And we see this time, though, that Sam has the lollipop. So that sharp lollipop that he was going to use on Krieg is what he ends up using on Leslie Bibb. Also, Mr. Krieg kind of sees this and he just like closes the door. Like, he knows this is going to happen. He's just like,
well,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, he already killed this child once and then watched his hand reattach itself and bring him back to life. So, I mean, if I'm him, I'm just staying out of it. Like, I have nothing to gain here.
But then there's another knock at his door, and he just groans like, oh my God, this is my life answering this door. And who is it? It's the kids from the bus accident.
The ghouls.
And they say, trick or treat. And we get a comic book flash and screaming, and the end.
The end. Justice. Justice for the children.
Justice. So what did you
ride.
think? Obviously you love it.
Oh yeah, I love it. I mean, this is I have no issues with this movie. I literally have zero complaints about it.
Yeah, I love this movie. Like I said before, it wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. I did say in the middle of this that, like, this is not a scary movie. There's definitely elements that scared me. I jumped a lot. I yelled a lot. But it's so campy and funny in so many ways. And it was just really good.
Yeah, and
I'd watch this again.
Yeah, and that's kind of the appeal of it, because like in the moment it's tense and you're a little scared and the jump scare happens, but just the whole tone of the movie is so fun that after you turn the movie off, it doesn't stay with you. Like, there's nothing that really makes you think. And and that actually will lead me right into my Nightlight score. It's a 1. There is nothing in this movie that, for me or Briana, who is, the most sensitive person in the world to horror, there's really nothing that would freak us out at night, I don't think, in this movie. So it's just a 1, and that's not a bad thing.
Well, mine was a 2, because it did a little bit, as I was going to sleep, kind of freak me out a little bit, because that's just how I'm always going to be. But before we fully get into our scores, let's talk about a couple of the reviews that I found. So I couldn't find a lot of like official reviews, but I have 2 here. One's super short, and I just want to point out a couple things, and then another one that was definitely written by someone who very much appreciates the film.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the because it didn't have a wide theatrical release.
Right.
There weren't a lot of critics.
Which I learned from one of the reviews. I was so surprised by that. Okay, so this one is just called Trick or Treat by Joe Laden. It's from Variety magazine. And he says the feature was directed by scripter Michael Dougherty. Trick or Treat neatly apportions scary and campy elements while cleverly interlacing 4 storylines on Halloween night in an Ohio hamlet, which I underlined the Ohio hamlet part here because this is where I was like, when did we say this was in Ohio?
Everybody but you knew it was in Ohio.
The tales of terror involve a high school principal who moonlights as a season-themed serial killer, a nasty practical joke played on a mentally challenged girl with a flair for jack-o'-lanterns, a virginal Red Riding Hood who has nothing whatsoever to fear from big bad wolves, and a cranky old eccentric who's brutally tricked when he fails to give out treats.
See, right here, like, this is why I hate movie reviews, because, like, yeah, Mr. Wilkins turns out to be, like, a killer pretty quickly, and you get that creep vibe from him immediately, but I just, like, I don't want to know anything going in. I feel like he just basically told those 4 stories in a sentence, and I don't like that.
Right. I never read the reviews. I don't even look for reviews until after we've watched the movie for that very reason. I also don't want anything to, like, form my opinion. Cox gets the most screen time and uses it. Oh, Cox is Mr. Krieg. And uses it to great advantage as his increasingly frantic character reacts to a murderous sprite in a burlap sack mask and dismembered hand that won't stay still. His profane response to the latter triggers the biggest laugh, which I did think it was really funny when he said, like, are you fucking kidding me? The other review is from Jim Vorel, and it says, in praise of Trick or Treat, the ultimate Halloween night movie. In the annals of the horror genre, there's no shortage of potential options for Halloween viewing. You might be drawn in the direction of an old classic, Bride of Frankenstein, Night of Living Dead, Psycho, all fine options. Likewise, you might make a night of modern horror classics like The Babadook or It Follows or The Witch. Not going to go wrong with any of those either, but none of them are the supreme Halloween night film. That movie is 2007's Trick or Treat. Film geeks and horror buffs know what I'm talking about and how it almost never happened at all. At the time of its release, Trick or Treat already seemed to be considered a failed project, an overly complicated horror anthology that rode the festival circuit for more than 2 years without ever getting a proper theatrical run. It got great reviews, but it was clearly considered too unorthodox a film for wide release. And like The Cabin in the Woods 5 years later, nobody knew how to market it to a mass audience. It was a victim of its own creativity. Now, we've seen The Cabin in the Woods, and as soon as I read that, I thought, yeah, this reminds me of that.
Yeah, and I don't want to say too much about Cabin in the Woods because
No.
I actually saw that movie in the theaters the day it came out with a friend of mine, having no idea. I had never even heard of it. I guess I wasn't watching a lot of TV or anything at this time, so I had no idea what it was, and I went into the theater completely blank. And that's actually what got me to stop watching movie trailers, especially for horror movies, because of the great experience I had with Cabin in the Woods. So if you like scary movies, you've never seen Cabin in the Woods, like literally turn off this podcast right now and go watch it. And don't read anything about it, because I guarantee you it will be one of the funnest movie experiences you have if you're a horror fan.
I think we'll probably cover it at some point in this too.
Maybe. I made Briana watch that before because I told it wasn't going to be something that's going to give her nightmares, and I think it didn't, right?
It did not, no.
Yeah.
But it was very good.
Incredible.
So he goes on to say, so thank your lucky stars for True Blood. In the exact same way that Cabin in the Woods benefited from the fact that Chris Hemsworth became a Hollywood star after it was initially shot, Trick or Treat benefited from the fact that Anna Paquin's star was on the rise in the wake of True Blood becoming a major hit on HBO. Without that coincidence, Trick or Treat's 2009 DVD release from Legendary Pictures may never have received any attention, and the greatest Halloween night movie ever conceived would have gone the way of the dodo. He goes on to say, none of those films have ever felt so distinctly Halloween to me as Trick or Treat does. Of all the horror films that implicitly related to the holiday or happened to take place on the date, none of them venerate the idea of Halloween, the nostalgic power of it, in a way that it is simultaneously so effective and surprisingly sincere. The moment I watched it for the first time, I felt like I had met an old friend, one who reassured me that I wasn't strange for loving the ghoulish holiday as much as I do. Trick or Treat seemed to say, don't worry, I feel the same way that you do. And he talks about how, as a kid, how much he loved Halloween and how this film just is primal nostalgia and brings up all of those memories. And it really does do exactly that, which actually made me appreciate more the whole Halloweentown aspect of this. So at first I was kind of like annoyed because it felt really unrealistic. But then I started thinking of it as almost like all those Christmas movies that I love so much from the Hallmark Channel, which make Christmas so idyllic and wonderful and something that doesn't actually really exist anywhere. So this is basically a Hallmark movie for Halloween.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. It's like, you remember those rom-coms in like the early to mid 2000s, like New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, I'm sorry, and Valentine's Day, where they play, what is it, Tonight's Gonna Be a Good Night by the Black Eyed Peas in the trailer, and it's just literally a rom-com of intersecting romantic stories. This is literally the exact same thing, but with people getting murdered on Halloween.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Love
I
it.
do want to say, so I like that review. That guy he's speaking my language. I feel like
Yeah.
him and I are on the same page about this movie. However, I do not like his depiction of Anna Paquin's career. It skyrocketed after 1996's Fly Away Home, which was a movie about a girl and her geese. And that really started Anna Paquin's path to stardom. And I think he needs to give that a little more credit.
Never heard of it, so he might be right. He also does talk a little bit about the sequel and how this was written in 2017. And the director says that my hope is that once Godzilla has been put to rest, so he worked on Godzilla King of Monsters, that I can dive back into it. I would love to finish writing it in post-production, and then I'd love to make it my next project, but we'll see. And that, again, that was in 2017. So it's been some time. We still don't have it yet. But yeah, good reviews. And I really like reading reviews that give me an appreciation for the film, which has happened, I think, every time so far. So, all right, my jump score for this. What's yours?
My jump score is a 6. It's because it's got a lot of jumps and they're all really solid and effective. The reason it's a 6 and not higher is because most of them are pretty well telegraphed.
Mm-hmm.
Most scary movies do a really good job of building up the tension with visual and audio cues to kind of let you know, hey, like a jump is coming. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But, for it to be like truly scary or make me jump at least, it has to kind of come out of nowhere. So that's why it's only kind of a middling score, because I felt that all of its jumps were pretty well telegraphed. But that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, mine was a 5, so pretty much the same. And for the same reason. Now, I will scream every single time, even though I absolutely am 100% certain it's coming. But it was still fun. Like, they were fun jump scares. Okay, what's your horror buff score?
This is a 10. It's a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
Like I said, this is, for me, This is a perfect movie. There is nothing I would change about this movie. You know, I made a lot of jokes about, you know, the nonsense of, you know, the way some of the characters behaved and stuff, but I really am just joking. Like, I love this movie. My only complaint is that it's too short. It's under an hour and a half, which is like, I feel like the baseline for, you know, feature films, but it also didn't really need anything. It wasn't missing anything. So yeah, it's a 10 for 10. It really is almost like a comedy. If you're a fan of horror movies, it's going to make you laugh and it's going to make you be entertained, but it's not like silly in the way that like Scary Movie is, for example. So they do a really good job of keeping it serious, but also really fun.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even put it in the same realm as like the Scary Movie franchise.
Oh, no, not at all. But if I say it's a scary movie but funny, I feel like that's where people's brains go.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not even, it's nothing like that. It's campy and good. It's like when Buffy is funny. That's what it reminds me of. Like, you wouldn't call Buffy anything to be like Scary Movie, but anyway, my Scaredy Cat score was a 4, which I always feel weird going after you. Why are you giving that face?
Go ahead. Give me your reasoning first.
Well, you give such high scores if you like the film, and then I have been giving low scores because I haven't been fully scared yet. But it's, I mean, obviously scarier than The Exorcist, which didn't scare me at all, but it wasn't fully scary. There were moments where I was scared, but why'd you make a face?
Well, I guess I was mistaken about what your score is. I guess I thought it was how much, as a scaredy cat, you enjoyed the movie, but what your score is actually how scary it is to people who don't like scary movies?
Yeah.
Okay, I just misunderstood that.
Oh, this whole time.
Yeah, I misunderstood the fundamental part of this podcast.
Wow, okay. Yeah, no, it's how much I was scared, not how much I enjoyed it.
So that actually reminds me a little of something. So we, like I mentioned last week, we have pretty much our list made up through the end of the year for movies. I've been kind of trying to ease Briana into this. So, you know, we've got some fun stuff coming up over the next few weeks, like, you know, Gremlins, a couple Christmas ones when we get closer to Christmas, a Thanksgiving-themed one. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I feel like with your Scaredy Cat score being a 4, I feel like this is a really good opportunity to talk about it. I want to scare the pants off of Briana. So for our last episode of the year, I want to do something very scary. You know, I don't want to quite go to like Hereditary yet because I don't want to scar Briana for life. But I was thinking either Sinister or It Follows. So if you guys just want to shoot us a DM or a comment, whatever, on Instagram or Twitter, let me know which one of those two you'd prefer, because I'm going to make Briana sit through it and then stay up with her for the next week.
We can do a poll. We'll do 2 polls this week. What a treat.
There you go. We'll do polls.
I'm scared of both and terrified. But speaking of what's coming up, next week we're going to be watching Final Destination.
Yeah, and that's another fun one. You know, I don't really think there's going to be too much that's going to scare Briana here. And now, like, I honestly just want to get to the scary stuff, but it's a process. So we have to ease her into it.
Yeah, so all of those early 2000s, late 90s movies that I missed because I was too afraid, I get to like watch those now. And Final Destination is one of them. So that's it, I think. Any final thoughts?
No, just if you haven't seen this movie, I really wish you didn't listen to this podcast first. But if you haven't, go watch it right now. It's a movie I would recommend to literally anybody. It's one of my favorites.
All right. And don't forget, please do leave a review, leave 5 stars for us, subscribe or follow, whichever it is on the podcast app that you listen to. We very much appreciate the support. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.